Welcome back, everybody, to CrimePod Castle Mystery Series. This is episode 18, and
18.
wow, 18 already.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, well, they say time flies when you're having fun, and
That's true.
yeah, and we've got a really interesting one for you guys today. This one's been requested by a lot of people.
Yeah.
The case of Neeraj Grover.
Oh, yeah.
A fascinating case. So you've been following the Neeraj Grover case, and you know the basics, right? A young, ambitious television executive found dead in a Mumbai apartment.
Right.
Let's rewind back to May 2008
Yeah.
and really unpack what made this case just explode in the media. Became one of India's most infamous crimes. And
Yeah, what's fascinating about this one is that initially the police weren't even investigating a murder.
yeah.
They were looking into a missing person report
Oh, wow.
filed by Neeraj Grover's family.
I see.
So imagine their shock when the trail led them to this seemingly innocent, aspiring actress, Maria Susairaj.
Maria Susairaj. I mean, the name sends chills down my spine even now. I remember I was pretty young when this happened.
Yeah.
But I still remember seeing her face plastered all over the news.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get ahead of ourselves, let's paint a picture of Neeraj Grover
Okay.
for our listeners.
Yeah, so Neeraj was only 25, but already making waves.
Wow, 25.
In the cutthroat world of Mumbai's entertainment industry. I mean, he wasn't just another face in the crowd. This guy had a knack for spotting talent, making him, a very sought-after television executive.
Right. And it seems like he had a bright future ahead of him.
Oh, his future was dazzlingly bright, yeah.
And it's this world, this fast-paced, high-stakes industry that brings him into contact with Maria Susairaj.
Yeah.
Now, she had just recently moved to Mumbai from Bangalore, fueled by dreams of Bollywood stardom.
Exactly. And here's where the plot thickens.
Okay.
Maria was already in a relationship with Emile Jerome, a naval officer.
I see.
So you've got the distance between them, coupled with Maria's ambition and then her connection with a rising star like Neeraj. I mean, you can already see how this is creating a perfect storm of jealousy and suspicion.
We've got a love triangle brewing.
Yeah.
But what transformed this into something far more sinister?
Yeah.
What happened on that fateful night of May 6, 2008?
Okay, so the pieces of the puzzle are kind of scattered, But if we try to reconstruct the events, a pretty chilling picture emerges.
Okay.
So Emile, driven by this potent mix of possessiveness and rage, arrives unannounced at Maria's apartment.
Wow.
It's not hard to imagine the tension,
Right.
the confrontation that must have followed.
And this is where it gets truly horrifying, right?
Yeah.
So the confrontation escalates, leading to this brutal, frenzied attack on Neeraj.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about hurting him.
Right.
It was about eliminating a perceived rival.
Exactly. The sheer brutality of the attack just speaks volumes. Multiple stab wounds, a crime of passion fueled by, uncontrolled jealousy.
Yeah.
But what happened next is equally chilling, revealing this cold, calculated side to this crime.
So instead of calling for help,
Right.
instead of facing the consequences of their actions, Emile and Maria chose a path that would forever brand them in the annals of true crime. They decided to cover up the murder.
Yeah. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, no. It was a methodical and, frankly, terrifyingly efficient plan. I mean, imagine the sheer horror of it. They dismembered Neeraj's body, packed the remains into bags, and drove to a remote location outside Mumbai.
Their aim, to obliterate any trace of Neeraj, to make him vanish as if he never even existed.
Right.
The level of detachment, the cold-bloodedness of it all, it's almost beyond comprehension.
And yet that's precisely what makes this case so captivating, so disturbing.
Right.
It forces us to confront the darkest recesses of human nature.
Right.
To acknowledge that even seemingly ordinary individuals are capable of unimaginable acts.
They thought they had committed the perfect crime.
Yeah.
But as we know, there's always a crack, a flaw, a tiny detail. That unravels even the most meticulously crafted facade.
And in this case, that crack appeared in the form of a missing person report. Neeraj's family, alarmed by his sudden disappearance, contacted the police, setting in motion a chain of events that would expose the truth behind the meticulously constructed lies.
So the police started their investigation. Did they suspect foul play right away, or was it something more subtle, something that didn't quite add up that led them to Maria's doorstep?
Well, initially there was nothing overtly suspicious, just a young woman worried about her missing friend. But as the police delved deeper, inconsistencies in Maria's story started to surface. Remember, she was an aspiring actress, someone used to crafting narratives,
Right.
to inhabiting different roles.
And that skill, that ability to weave a convincing tale almost became her undoing because
Yeah,
the truth has a way of seeping out, doesn't it?
it does.
Especially under the scrutiny of seasoned investigators.
Exactly, yeah. The pressure mounted. The police, sensing something amiss, they began to focus their attention on Maria's apartment. Forensic teams combed the scene,
Right.
searching for any trace of Neeraj, any clue that could shed light on his disappearance.
And it was during this meticulous examination that the first cracks in Maria's carefully constructed facade began to appear.
Yeah.
Traces of blood, cleverly concealed, but impossible to erase completely,
Right.
told a story that contradicted her initial account.
The evidence was mounting, the net was closing in. Faced with irrefutable proof, Maria finally broke down, confessing to her involvement in the crime. But it wasn't a simple confession. It was a carefully crafted narrative designed to minimize her role,
Oh.
to portray herself as a victim of circumstance.
So she pointed the finger at Emile,
Yeah.
painting him as the sole perpetrator, the jealous lover driven to a fit of rage. But did the police?
Right.
Did the public buy into this narrative of the damsel in distress?
Not entirely, no. Remember, we're talking about the dismemberment of a body, a calculated attempt to dispose of the remains. These are not the actions of someone paralyzed by fear.
Right.
They suggest a level of complicity that goes beyond simply being a passive bystander.
And that's what makes Maria's role in all this so fascinating, so perplexing.
Yeah.
Was she a manipulative mastermind, pulling the strings from the shadows? Or was she, as her defense team would later argue, a victim of a controlling, abusive relationship, forced into participating in the cover-up out of fear for her own safety?
It's a question that has haunted this case from the beginning.
Yeah.
To understand Maria's actions, we need to delve into the complexities of trauma bonding,
Right.
a phenomenon that can occur in abusive relationships where the victim develops a deep emotional dependence on their abuser.
So even though Emile was the one who wielded the weapon,
Mm-hmm.
Maria might have felt trapped, unable to break free from his influence,
Right.
even complicit in his horrific actions.
That's one possible interpretation. But it's important to remember that we're dealing with a complex individual here.
Of course.
Someone driven by ambition, someone desperate to succeed in a cutthroat industry.
Let's not forget, Maria was an aspiring actress. Perhaps she saw this horrific crime as a twisted opportunity.
Yeah.
With Neeraj out of the picture and Emile facing a lengthy prison sentence, the path to stardom might have seemed clearer, less cluttered.
It's a chilling thought, but one that underscores the layers of manipulation, ambition, and desperation that intertwined in this case. The line between victim and perpetrator becomes blurred, leaving us with more questions than answers.
The arrest of Emile and Maria, the gruesome details of the crime, the shocking cover-up attempt, it all sent shockwaves through Mumbai.
Right.
The media, sensing a story that would captivate the nation, descended upon the case with a fervor that only intensified as the trial approached.
The public was hungry for answers, eager to understand what could drive seemingly ordinary individuals to commit such a heinous act.
Right.
The love triangle narrative, the ambition, the betrayal, it all added fuel to the media firestorm.
And then there was the trial itself. The courtroom became a stage, a battleground for competing narratives.
Right.
Emile's defense team argued that he acted in a moment of passion, a crime of jealousy, fueled by an uncontrollable rage, rather than a premeditated act of murder.
This distinction, though subtle, was crucial in the Indian legal system. The charge of culpable homicide not amounting to murder acknowledges a loss of control, a distinction that carries a significantly lighter sentence than a conviction for a premeditated murder.
And what about Maria? How did her defense team attempt to navigate the treacherous legal waters of this case?
They went for a classic damsel in distresses narrative, portraying Maria as a victim of Emile's manipulation and abuse, forced into participating in the cover-up out of fear. They argued that her actions, while reprehensible, were not driven by malice, but by a desperate need to protect herself.
But how much of that narrative did the jury, to the public, believe? Because, let's be honest, there's a fine line between being a victim of circumstance and being a willing participant in a horrific act.
That's precisely the question that hung over the courtroom, creating a sense of unease, of ambiguity that permeated the entire trial.
So the stage was set, the evidence presented, the narrative spun, the arguments made. The fate of Emile Jerome and Maria Susairaj now rested in the hands of the jury. But what they didn't know was that their verdict would spark a wave of controversy, of outrage that would extend far beyond the confines of the courtroom.
I can only imagine, right? Waiting for that jury to come back and...
Oh, the tension must have been palpable.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the jury filed back in, their faces betraying no hint of the decision that they had reached.
And what happened?
Well, what followed was a moment etched in the memories of all those who followed this case.
Okay.
Emile Jerome was convicted of culpable homicide not amounting to murder. A verdict that acknowledged the violence, the rage, but stopped short of labeling it a premeditated act.
I see.
He was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
10 years for a life extinguished. It felt inadequate to many, right? Oh, absolutely. A slap on the wrist that failed to reflect the brutality of the crime.
Yeah.
The calculated attempt to erase a young man's very existence.
The public outcry was immediate and intense.
Oh, yeah.
People questioned the legal nuances that differentiated murder from culpable homicide.
Right.
They grappled with the idea that a crime fueled by such destructive jealousy could be perceived as anything less than premeditated.
And what about Maria?
Yeah, did the jury buy into the damsel in distress's narrative? Or did they see through the carefully constructed facade, recognizing her as something more than just a passive bystander caught in a web of fear?
Well, the verdict for Maria Susairaj was perhaps even more shocking.
Okay.
She was convicted of destroying evidence and harboring the offender, receiving a mere 3-year sentence.
3 years for her role in the cover-up, for the dismemberment of a body, for the attempt to erase all traces of Neeraj Grover. It felt like a miscarriage of justice to many, right?
To many it did. A verdict that minimized her involvement, failing to hold her accountable for the darkness she had embraced.
And what's so intriguing is that the public's reaction wasn't just about the legal technicalities.
Right.
It tapped into deeper societal anxieties.
Yeah.
Anxieties about the perceived leniency towards those with influence. Anxieties about the safety of women in a society grappling with gender dynamics.
Yeah, the Neeraj Grover case became a lightning rod, a focal point for discussions that transcended the courtroom.
It forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about ambition, about the toxic underbelly of glamour and fame, about the fragility of life itself.
And it brought into sharp focus the power of media narratives. The case played out in the newspapers, on television screens, in hushed whispers at street corners. The lines between fact and fiction blurred, creating a sense of collective fascination, even obsession.
So as we close the chapter on this deeply unsettling case, what are the key takeaways for our listener? What insights can we glean from the darkness that enveloped Neeraj Grover's life and the ripples of shock and outrage that followed?
Well, first and foremost, I think it serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked jealousy, how a corrosive emotion can warp perception, leading to acts of violence that shatter lives and leave indelible scars.
It also highlights the complexities of human relationships,
Yes.
the blurred lines between victim and perpetrator. Maria's role in this tragedy continues to be debated, a testament to the multifaceted nature of human behavior.
And finally, the Neeraj Grover case underscores the importance of critical thinking, of questioning narratives, and acknowledging that justice, like truth, is often a matter of perspective.
The quest for answers, for a sense of closure, continues even today. The memory of Neeraj Grover, the young man whose life was tragically cut short, lingers, a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of a story that captivated and horrified a nation. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Neeraj Grover case. It's been a really heavy one, but it's important to talk about these things. And make sure you guys follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle Mystery Series so you don't miss any of our future episodes. We'll be back next week with a brand new case, ready to unravel another chilling tale. Until then, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.